Earlier this year, the discussion about the future of work was mostly focused on the strategic use of various space as a service models, and especially the viability of co-working after the WeWork debacle. Little did we know at the time that our world would be turned upside down by the coronavirus pandemic, and suddenly my new office might be my dining room table. What's unclear at this point is what going to the office will look like. Fortunately, we have a panel of experts with unique perspectives, all different, to share with us as we explore how workplaces will become dynamic, frictionless, and healthy. Leading the conversation today, I'm very pleased to welcome Ben Munn, who's the Managing Director of Flexit JLL, and he's joining us from London. And there's Ben. Ben, good afternoon, Ben. Good to see you.
Good morning, Steve. Great to see you. Thanks for inviting me along.
Yeah, and we're certainly looking forward to the conversation. So at this point, I'll turn it over to you. You can introduce the guests and we'll get the conversation going. Thank you, Ben.
Fantastic. And good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, wherever you may be, and welcome to our session on Maximum Flex, which is a pretty exciting title. We've got an exciting panel that I'll introduce in a second. So what a great tee up from Steve, what a great tee up from Andrea as well, covering a lot of the things around health and well-being. We're going to explore how workplaces are becoming more dynamic, less friction between them, and look at the health and well-being implications for this new mode that we may be moving into. So a lot of content to cover in 45 minutes. So we better get stuck in. Just before we get going, as Steve said, I'm Ben Munn. I lead Flex globally at JLL. And I'd like to introduce my fellow panelists. I'm delighted to welcome a group of people with a fantastic diversity of experience and perspectives on our topic today. We have Wayne Berger from the Americas, the CEO of Americas at IWG. We have Luke Rondell, who's the Director of Channel Partnerships at Saltmine. And we have Randy Winery, who's the VP of Design at Fidelity, representing the occupiers for us. And then finally, Paul Valet, who is the CEO at Tahana. So thank you all for joining us today. And please, audience, do remember that you can participate by asking questions, as Steve mentioned at the top of the intro, and I'll do my best to get them into the stream of debate as we get going. So let's get stuck in. I'll start with an easy question for you, Randy. Is anyone ever going back to an office that isn't in their home?
They absolutely will be. And the question, I think, obviously that's not the real question is why we'll be going back to the office. So what's going to drive people back to the office? And what we keep looking at is the kind of future state, not where we are today. Everyone has their kind of panic-driven COVID lens on right now, and rightfully so. There are a lot of things to manage to kind of slowly get people back to the office. And everything we're doing right now kind of goes against many of the principles we have in place to encourage, the ideal office environment, lots of collaboration, connection, interaction with people. And that's just very difficult to achieve right now. But if we get fast forward past that, we see the office as an even more critical element for associates.
So thanks very much, and great to have you with us, Randy. So Paul, handing over to you, obviously as a purveyor of virtual workplaces, interested to get your take on that and what your thoughts are around what the office is for in the future.
I do think we've seen a major change from the office being the center of gravity for a team to the digital workplace being a center of gravity for a team. It used to be that we saw working from home as a perk, and we assumed people would be less productive working from home, but that they would be happier because we're giving them this perk. It turns out that people are more productive working from home, which took a lot of us by surprise, including me, who have been working in this remote work industry my whole career. But they are less happy. They are struggling with collaboration and communication, with loneliness, with staying motivated, with connecting emotionally with their teams. And what that means is that there is definitely a place for commercial real estate in the future in terms of addressing those particular concerns. How do we make employees fill the gap that they have working from home in terms of connecting emotionally with their company's mission and vision and with their teammates? And I think there is an opportunity there.
Well, I'm relieved to hear that there's a place for commercial real estate in the future, and I'm sure Wayne, you're relieved to hear that as well. But thanks, thanks, Paul. So Wayne, bringing you in, where are these offices going to be? What kind of offices, and who's actually going to be responsible for them?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Ben. Great to be here today. I mean, so when you think about offices, you know, when we look at the world and what the future looks like, as Randy and Paul had discussed, the future is remarkable. We look at a short-term, a midterm, and a long-term future, and the short-term is literally hours, midterm is now weeks, and long-term is almost this idea of what 2021 looks like. And there is a home for the office, and or the workplace, but it's shifting dramatically. And I think what we've been learning through this process is we've all lived in this globalized work from home bubble movement. And yes, we've been able to be productive. We've been able to leverage technology as a bridge for connectivity amongst our team members. And what this is going to lead to is choice for both organizations and for team members. What's interesting is prior to this global pandemic, the trends were there in which organizations were looking at their, let's call it workplace or their real estate portfolio in a bit of a different way. They were looking at ways to manage their overall portfolio in which there was a certain subset of their portfolio that was a traditional lease. And then they were looking at flexibility and fluidity amongst a portion of their portfolio to help support their team members' desire to be able to choose where, when, how, and what they called work. So the more progressive organizations were starting to shift, giving their team members choice to be able to choose from where they needed to work based on what was required that day. What we're going to see moving forward is this real movement towards, I think, what is one key word, which is ubiquity. Workplace is becoming more ubiquitous. And what we've seen now is we've been able to gather via technology in order to conduct work. What we're also going to see is, obviously, there is a real need for social engagement and social interaction. And one of the last key points is, we've talked about productivity by being able to maximize our workday because we're here based in home or sometimes close to our home. What we're going to see moving forward is the ability to be able to eliminate long commute times, be able to work closer to our clients, based on our family needs, based on our social needs, and also just based on our kind of what our day-to-day requirement is, or what the calendar looks like for the following day or the following weeks. That's going to give people the ability to be able to work from home. So companies are moving faster at a more accelerated rate to be able to say workplace is ubiquitous, and our team members can work from wherever they need to work, whether it's in a home-based environment, whether it's from a corporate headquarters, or whether it is from a flexible workspace, a co-working facility, or a shared workplace that gives people the ability to be productive, gives them all the amenities they need, but also gives them choice to work from wherever they need to work at that time and be able to integrate as effectively as possible within their organization. Because there's a significant financial benefit on that end for organizations as well by adding more flexibility to their portfolio.
Fantastic. Luke, I wanted to turn to you because that idea of ubiquity, the ubiquitous office, anywhere, kind of anytime working, has a lot of implications around how do we plan for that? How do we know where the demand's going to fall? How do we figure out how to pay for it? What does good look like in that future, and how are companies and employers and employees going to know?
Yeah, it's a great question, Ben, and I think it's a relatively complex one, and it's certainly a new one for us, or at least it's evolved from how we used to measure if workplace is working. And I think it is grounded in a lot of what we've heard all the other panelists talk about here, which is about, workplace is really going to become about connectivity. And so connectivity from the data standpoint or from a functional standpoint, we've discovered that that can extend outside of the physical built environment into our homes, right? We're connecting over Zoom right now. We've discovered that you can work on softwares remotely from pretty much anywhere. And so that type of connectivity has extended outside the physical workplace. And I believe the physical workplace is going to become very much, as we've heard the other panelists speak about social connectivity and about person-to-person connectivity. So collaboration is going to be king in the physical workplace, which right now, we're still figuring out how to do that safely and how to organize the workplace so we can connect, we can collaborate, while also maintaining the sort of the physical distance that we need to in order to manage the pandemic. So I think that shift in what workplace does for an organization and what it's about is going to drive, to the point of your question, how do we measure if it's working? It's going to be a complex series of different tools and metrics to do that. I think the fundamental sort of baseline for all of it will be transparency in data. So I think it's really about getting data surfaced and getting data actionable in a way that CRE teams now can have visibility across their whole workplace portfolio, and workplace considered very broadly, right? So it's the physical locations, it's certainly their flex locations. Now in my company, we're even looking at integrating home offices in certain ways into what is considered part of an organization's workplace, because that's where we're all working from now. And so that opens up a whole interesting set of questions. But just to focus on yours, I do think the focus will shift to the employee. So I think commercial real estate is going to feel and become more B2C. And I think a number of tools that the B2C world uses in order to measure sort of success or performance, we're going to see more prevalent within the CRE world as well. So, certainly a lot of it's going to be employee-centric surveys, sort of employee heartbeats or test sort of quick touch points like that in order to track how employees are responding to things. You walk out of a meeting room, for example, you get a 2-question survey on your phone that's pushed to your workplace app, says, how was it, scale of 1 to 10? Would you use this room for another meeting? This is an NPS score for the physical environment, right? So I think those types of tools will be really prevalent going into the future. Of course, combined with, building off of the last sessions, some of the points mentioned there with the IoT and smart environment. So sensoring is certainly going to be a thing. I think we'll get much, much better with that in the next several years. So I think that combination of measuring the physical environment, but really having a focus on the employee experience is going to be how we know if this new paradigm of workplace is working well.
Excellent. Randy, that brings me back to you. As you think from an occupier perspective, how much choice do you think organizations really will give their employees, and why do you think they will, if they will?
Yeah, that's a fundamental question. We're in the throes of thinking about, well, what does the future of workplace look like? And we can't answer that question until we know what the future of work looks like. And the future of work is absolutely tied to organizational design. How are organizations going to organize themselves to facilitate, this kind of flexibility that we're all clamoring for? So that's a question we're putting back to our businesses, is helping them understand the decisions they have to make to help something like this work, which, by the way, I would say today, we're all working from home. And to me, it feels like the bar was set so low coming into this, like this is going to be a disaster. And everyone's so pleased with how, I'm incredibly surprised too. I mean, just connectivity alone, forget about productivity or anything like that. Everyone's really happy with how it's working. We don't know how well, at least for us, because we don't have a good measure of productivity, but I think that there is a consensus that it's working pretty well. But what we're really missing is, I think, that the spontaneity, right? The spontaneous interaction is gone. And so if we think we're doing really well now, we can just imagine a future where we actually design a system, the technology, the processes, et cetera, that support remote working and getting people into the office at the right time, because that's where the spontaneity happens. You get people whether it's virtually or together, get them together in unplanned ways. That's where the creativity happens. And it's really difficult to do right now with Zoom calls. Everyone sees that. So how are we going to conquer that? And that's some of the big questions for us right now are, all right, well, we're coming in. How are we going to come in? Are we coming in as teams? Are we coming in as individuals? Everyone starts spreading around. How are you going to get people in the right time, the right place? And technology is going to be a big factor there.
Well, not on that note, that's a perfect kind of flip to you, Paul. Can you create environments virtually where that kind of spontaneous interaction, collaboration, idea generation can happen? And will that drive again to Randy's question, org design and, you know, what we think about the workspace we need?
It's interesting because it maps directly to this question of real estate. When we normally go into the office, we're in a context that is social. And then we kind of quieten that social context in order to focus on our screens. But in our digital lives, we're focused on our screens, and the social context is just one app out of many. And it means that we don't have that same ability to focus exclusively on the social interaction and then push it aside and then focus exclusively on our work productivity. Everything is kind of blended and flowed in with each other, and that makes for a higher level of distraction, but also, I think, as everybody has pointed out, it's just less effective. So the water cooler, spontaneous, serendipitous interaction, the challenging interaction, the interaction where you're anonymous and your ideas are being evaluated completely on the basis of their merit, as opposed to your name and bio. All of those, we've been deprived of those for a few months, and I think the consequences of that are yet to come. Does tooling exist, however, to try to replicate it? I would say yes. There are tools, like, for example, I'm thinking of Donut, which is one of these tools that creates kind of a coffee randomizer experience where your team are going to have, you know, random one-on-ones independent of the way the organization is organized. Certainly adopting tools like Slack or other team-based group chat tooling is very important. And there are new interactions that are possible as well that we haven't yet seen how those result in changes to our productivity and our innovation. One of the most important ones is the fact that remote work tends to also be much more asynchronous, so much less synchronized all at once, which I believe, as Randy was mentioning, that's a problem. Well, it is a problem, but it actually does engage better creativity and contribution from our teammates that are in other time zones or working overnight when we're normally working. They suddenly feel like equal citizens. The digital workspace is inherently flat. It doesn't create a concentration of power at headquarters in the way that a traditional workplace tends to do. And that flattening of our hierarchies by moving to a digital workplace by default, where the office and the grouping and the collaboration is the perk or the unusual thing. Well, we have yet to really find out. Not only we have to find out what the consequences are with the state of the art of the technology in 2020, but we also have yet to find out what the software engineers and entrepreneurs who are experiencing this reality this year are building for shipment over the course of the coming quarters that might actually create discontinuous advantages to the new normal, which we haven't seen that yet. So I remain optimistic.
It sounds like a pretty impressive brave new world or current world for some already. I think that there's an interesting question that's come in from the audience, which I'd like to talk to. And this kind of relates a little bit to our questions around, sorry, there's a helicopter overhead. This is live Zooming for you. It also, so the question relates to a topic I wanted to move on to, which actually Andrea addressed, which is about the health performance, if you like, of workspaces. But we'll move on to that after asking this question. And Wayne, if you could kick us off. With this variety of choice, with this idea that actually perhaps technology can drive that connectivity and interaction, what kind of work patterns do we expect to see in the future? How much time do we think people will actually be spending in these different modes and different options of work? How often are they going to go into the office?
Yeah, it's a great question. So Ben, when you look at how often will people go into the office? Well, People will go into the office less and less. People will travel to an office more and more. And what I mean by that is, if you look pre-COVID pandemic, 53% of the global workforce spent more than half their week working from an environment that wasn't their traditional corporate headquarters. That will continue to accelerate. So it's really becoming utilization. People will start to leverage and utilize a network of locations. They're going to go to a corporate headquarters, and that will be what's more considered to be let's call it a trophy workplace. And that trophy workplace is a space that is like highly intentional to be used for the very specific meetings or requests they have on that very day. But people will travel to other different workplaces, whether it's a client's workplace, whether it's another team member's workplace, whether it's from a, let's call it a flex space or co-working location to access for virtual meetings or physical meetings. Or it could very well be something that's very virtual as well. I mean, good example is Tobias Lütke, who's the CEO of Shopify, tech company that employs about 5,000 people here globally. You know, he recently stated that workplace centricity is completely over, right? Every single one of their knowledge-based workers can work from wherever they need to work, including a Shopify office, if it makes sense for them. So the notion of working from the office is completely changing. What we will see, whether it's from 1 year up to 5, 10 years from now, is people accessing a network of locations based on their very specific needs that day.
Can I jump in for a quick question, Wayne? I wanted to build off of what you were talking about there. And I think it's an interesting point that we haven't necessarily addressed yet. And, you know, if we're existing in a world right now that is more inherently flat because we're all working from home, it's a new environment for all of us, and we're all relatively isolated, I'll say, from each other, from our colleagues. I'm curious to get sort of your opinion or your perspective on what happens when we come back and that starts to break down. So maybe it is a network of offices, but now there are going to be the cool offices, you know, and there's going to be the offices that everybody wants to go to. And then there's going to be the offices that sort of you end up at because you didn't get a seat at the cool office. So I'm curious, and maybe, Randy, this would be an interesting one for you as well, being on the occupier side, but how we're starting to think about, like, there will be social dynamics we have to manage in the future. And how do we start tackling or getting ahead of that if we can?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really interesting question, and you know, we've seen this now. To Wayne's point, I mean, the Zoom calls have been a great equalizer. This is the best video conferencing experience I think any of us have had over the last several months. Not necessarily because of Zoom or other platforms, but because everyone is in the same situation. You don't have that kind of hierarchy that you tend to have in the office, or have groups in the office with a few people dialing in, right, as second-class citizens almost. So I think that's been a real benefit to us, and it's something that we're a bit worried about coming back to the office. And you know, the notion of the you know, going back to the cool office versus the other office, I think a concern I have on that, and you know, having kind of people spread out, and it's something that, you know, we looked at years ago. You know, satellite offices and, you know, making it convenient for people to get to different places and not necessarily come into the office. So I think we have to think completely differently about what it is you're coming back to. And Wayne touched on this, you know, just it's going to be a different environment. It has to be, I think, to draw people back, which brings us back to the question of why are you coming back? If you're coming back to connect with people, well, then you inherently need people there, right? So if in other words, we have our headquarters office and we want to drive people there because we see the value in bringing people together, proximity, driving innovation and creativity, being together, there's a fundamental problem there, or challenge, if you start getting people going to all these other places. And then I guess the challenge is then on the technology realm, like Paul said, is how do you take advantage of technology to supplement that experience or create the same experience in a virtual world that you're going to otherwise get in person at the office. So I think if anything, we see our real estate footprint, we're not coming at this to say we need to shrink the footprint. We're coming at this to say we need to get the most value out of the footprint we have. And if that means we're shedding buildings because we're expecting people to come into less places, but get that kind of critical mass, then that's what we'll do. If we see it going the other way, then that's what we'll do. And I think it's such early stages right now. We're still trying to figure that out.
Can I just challenge the panel, and I'd like to open this up, and thank you to the Q&A for this. Does this idea of being able to work from home, the ubiquitousness of the workplace, not run the risk of disadvantaging some people within the workforce from being able to participate, from being able to do that effectively? We've seen that with education. I don't know, if you've seen that in all of your communities, where there have been those that have had the digital tools available to be able to school from home, and there's been a big disadvantage to those that haven't got that. Do we run the risk in this, whether it's about a childcare issue, whether it's about a space issue at home, because we're reliant on people having, home offices or space to do this, plus the technology? What role do we play, and what role does the office play in flattening that landscape?
I think internet access has to become a public utility to really flatten that, right? Ultimately, not everyone has the same level of access globally to this kind of work. So I think that's something that has to be considered.
Yeah, I think there's, sorry. I do think there's a lot of hope around ubiquitous internet. However, you see the low Earth orbit constellations launching, and at least here in Canada, where I'm based, we have great hopes for how this can help us develop the North, and especially possibly provide remote work as a path to economic development and even reconciliation with the Indigenous peoples of Canada. Today, in the Indigenous communities, there is no easy and reliable and fast internet. They are generally quite remote. But with low Earth orbit constellations and ubiquitous low latency internet, some of which are launching and becoming available this year, and in fact next year, one made in Canada solution from Telesat is launching as well. When those become available, I really feel like we'll have a chance to possibly paint a picture towards healing the rural-urban divide, shifting economic power away from cities. Cities are powerful partly because of their connective tissue and their integrated supply chains. But in a digital-first workplace, the connectivity that we're sharing right now is completely flat to the connectivity we would have if we were both in Midtown. And that really changes the dynamics dramatically, but can also, I hope anyway, lead to a path to more rural development, maybe a path towards help with our Indigenous communities' economic development, and just in general, reduce the economic power of cities in favor of a flattened economic power and economic development. Let's just say a rising tide should float all boats, but I think we can see that the economic power of cities has dramatically outpaced the economic power of our countryside. And that creates certain social ills that we should all be interested in resolving with remote work.
Yeah, I think maybe broadly speaking, I think it'll just change the things we really have to be concerned about in terms of access. So I think, we for a while, or, certainly in the last probably 20 years, have made huge strides on physical access, right? And providing ADA and having these sort of written into our legal codes, the ability for all peoples, regardless of physical ability to access workspaces and to participate in the conversation. And so I do think this is a shift, and it's a shift in some of our fundamental infrastructure. And we're obviously focused mostly on knowledge work right now. So those of us who can dial in and do our work from, we do our work on a screen, just regardless of where that screen's positioned, which is not the case for everybody. And so I think it will shift the ground basically that we're standing on in terms of what it means to have access. And so we're going to have new things we have to pay attention to. Internet connectivity is going to be a big one, certainly.
It's a really interesting point. I'd like to connect to something that Paul said at the beginning, which is, and we've referenced, and Andrea again set us up for, which is about health and well-being, which is about whether that's mental well-being. You mentioned there the strides that we've taken around improving workplaces. We heard in the previous presentation the air quality, light quality is becoming hugely valuable, financially, but obviously in terms of health and well-being as well. So in this distributed future where we have choice and we move around, where does responsibility sit? Where does duty of care sit for the employees' well-being, to ensure that they're not becoming isolated, etc.? I'm gonna pick on Wayne to kick us off on that one.
And look, it's a great question, Ben. And number one, I think employers and organizations have a high duty responsibility. And I don't believe that the answer is working from home solely. I mean, I think the reality is, you see what's happening today. We are in such an extraordinary time, and we're all essentially, many people were essentially driven to work from home because of our focus on trying to control the pandemic. But we also see the impact on one's mental health and well-being. It's a challenge working from home. In some ways, there's a benefit because we've had a chance to have more time spent in an intimate fashion with our families than ever before. You talk to many people who've had more dinners at home with their families the last 4 months than they had in the previous 10 years. It's been a very special time in that degree, but it's also tough. Right? And you think about young kids, animals, family, friends, etc. Trying to find a way to be productive at times is a challenge. So it's interesting. The answer is not solely working from home and how do we help support individuals in managing that mental, emotional, or physical stress, having the right setup physically, ergonomically, etc. The answer is, how do we provide the best experience for our team members moving forward? That's the answer. And it's no longer this notion of, to Luke's point earlier, how do we provide the best physical work environment for the buildings in which we sign our leases and place our names on the building? It's now about, how do we provide the best environment for our team members to ensure they're able to accomplish what they need to accomplish, both from a social side, a productivity side, and a workplace side. And that is going to be a component around, how do we make sure that people are able to accomplish what they need to accomplish, whether it's from working from home on a Monday, whether it's working close to where they need to be able to work from on Tuesday, Wednesday. And then when they come to the office, how do we make sure that they're able to get there effectively and have the type of experience that they're looking for? I think workplace, and let's call it commercial space, will change to a degree where it used to be utilitarian. Now it's going to be experiential, right? That's really what it comes down to. And it's integrating virtual and physical all together in one. Our notion of working together like this versus just working in a physical state is going to completely change. It's a total integration. It's going to be virtual and physical, and it's going to be about high degree of experience.
Randy, can I bring you in on that?
Yeah, and I think therein lies the challenge of, how do you equalize those, right? I mean, take all the benefits of each and kind of mash them together, and it is a huge challenge. And getting back to the office, I think we also have to be careful about coming back. Think about how we're coming back to the office. We're going to coming back in kind of dribs and drabs. We're going to come back at 10% the workforce. We'll do pilots, slowly but surely bleed back into what was the office, right? So we're going backwards in time now. And just like now, we're kind of force fitting ourselves into today's work model, working from home. Nothing was designed for us to work this way. We're making everything work the best we can. But when you go back to the office, okay, now everyone, I think, agrees the office has to evolve quite a bit and fast to really take advantage of this. And if we're not careful, we're going to find that we slowly bleed back and get 10% in. And then a year later, or half of us are there. Whatever the time frame is, you could fast forward a few years and see, holy crap, we're right back where we started and nothing's changed, right? And I think there's we have to be careful about that, because in the end, like Paul or Wayne said, a hybrid is where we're headed. I mean, if we were to say today, what are we looking for? It's going to be a hybrid, and it's going to be taking those two worlds, bringing them together. How do you do that the best way? We can design that, we can talk about it and figure it out, but things are changing so fast. And as you start to bleed back in and you look at the costs, I'm not suggesting any of us are looking to do this, but there is a world in which that happens, because it's like you're boiling that frog or that rabbit, and it doesn't know until it's too late, and it's already happened. We're all back in the office, and hey, it's still working, so we're fine.
We just had a hiccup in between, and everything goes back to normal.
Yeah.
So I'm conscious of time, and I know we could go on for a lot longer. There's so much here in the discussion, but I wanted to close with two questions, and I want to hear from each of the panelists. So first of all, and I'm going to go in the order that you're on my screen. So Paul, you're going to be first up here. Do you think that this change that we're going through right now, and the acceleration of some of the kind of the work practices that we've been talked about, is going to materially affect demand for office space generally? And if so, how?
I do. I think that it will change the total demand in ways that are difficult for me to predict, but I think your conference has better subject matter experts than I. However, I do think that what's interesting is it will actually change demand in, think of it this way. Would you prefer to, if your workplace is digital by default, would you prefer to employ someone who pays rent in Midtown or who pays rent in Allentown? And there is a real economic consequence to the permanent shift in our workplace talent strategies. And I think that means that there's going to be, I hope anyway, a resurgence of the value of the real estate in Allentown. I don't know, I'm thinking of Allentown because there's a really beautiful tower there called the PPL Tower. And it just seems like it's the only commercial real estate that was ever developed in that town. It's in the middle of nowhere. But it's really interesting to think about the opportunities and consequences. Also, the configuration of the commercial real estate is going to look a lot more like, those of you who've ever been and visited like Deloitte or Accenture's innovation centers, where these are places that are designed for teams to go for a retreat with their management consultant in a facilitated session, that help us, kind of bond as a team and set our agenda for the next few months. I think that is a huge opportunity for commercial real estate to develop those shared workplaces. Speaking as an employer myself, my company is only 60 people, but still, I do not want to have assemble everybody and then have to clean it all up after. I would like to trust that to a professional who has a process in place to set that up.
Luke, same question to you.
Yeah, it's a great question. I would say, taken in aggregate, I don't think this will have a very large effect on commercial real estate. I think it will look very different. So I think in specific, I guess specifically, just to not take up the rest of our time, plus, I'll say I think it will be much more dispersed. I think it will be more fit to purpose, right? So it'll be less of sort of a generic desk in a building with 1,000 of your colleagues, and it'll be more a innovation center, a large group meeting, town hall space. It will be our home offices as part of our personal real estate. So I think it'll be far more distributed and more fit to purpose.
Great. Wayne, your perspective?
I'm an optimist by nature, so I would say that I feel that the industry will continue to move forward. What's interesting is this movement and what's taking place right now is actually going to repurpose space to a different degree than we've ever seen before. If you think about, let's remove ourselves from the commercial real estate industry. The industrial market right now is growing at an accelerated pace because of what's going on with everything around online shopping and how we're accessing our goods and services, et cetera. So industrial is growing, retail shopping malls shrinking. You're seeing commercial real estate at a bit of a standstill right now because of a pandemic. Look, the reality is we are going to repurpose space, and we're going to utilize space differently than ever before. Trust me, there are people here as part of this event right now that will work in a shopping mall one day. You may not believe it, it's going to happen. Access to parking is incredible, it's close to home. There is going to be a need, and you're going to take a step back and go, oh my goodness, I'm working where the old Navy was. It's going to happen. Things are shifting dramatically because we're going to use space in a different way. We always traditionally, we always over exaggerate the impact right now and underestimate the impact of change, not to steal anything from Bill Gates, but but this will continue to move forward as how we utilize space. The reality is we need the ability to gather virtually and physically. How we gather and how we're productive is going to continue to shift over time.
Thank you very much. I look forward to working in a shopping mall in the future. Although I'd always imagined I was going to be a car parking attendant or maybe a shop assistant. So it might not be that future. Randy, as kind of a big as the signifier for us of occupiers, the crucial driver of demand for office space. What's your final word on how this is going to impact demand and therefore office space?
Yeah, I don't see a significant shift. I agree with everything that everyone said here. There's aspects of everyone's comments here that I want to pull from, but in short, I think we see a change in how we're going to use the space, not a significant change in how much space we have, and that's tied to whether you own space versus leasing space. I think if you own it versus leasing it, that's going to change your attitude about it. But in the end, in short, I guess we're going from let's have an offsite as a team to let's have an onsite as a team, right? I think that's the best way to put it, and that's the extreme. But yeah, I think we're looking most closely right now at how do we change the space, not how do we shed space. But we'll see how that goes.
Fantastic. I was going to ask at what point companies are going to start paying their employees to work from home, but I'm very conscious of time. And there was something fascinating that came out in the news today as well, which some of you will have seen, which is about the forecast for global populations over the next 80 years. So that will undoubtedly have an impact on real estate. So much to be discussed there. And finally, someone has kindly pointed out to me that both of my future retirement plans, i.e. shop assistant and parking attendant, will not exist in the future because they will be taken over by technology. So I need to go and rethink what I'm going to be doing in my later life. I'm really grateful to the panelists today, to Wayne, Luke, Randy and Paul. That was a fantastic conversation. I'm incredibly thankful as well, I think we all are, to those of you listening. Apologies that we didn't get all of the questions, but thank you so much for your participation. There's so much more we could talk about, but for today, that's what we've got time for. Thanks to all of the panel, and we'll hack to.
Excellent. Thank you to all of the panels. Fantastic discussion. Clearly, we could have done a few hours on this. It's such a rich and timely topic that everybody is dealing with. Ben Munn, thank you for guiding the conversation, and we'll look forward to staying in touch with all of you and seeing you soon on the campus at MIT here in Cambridge.